You're listening to the Meet the Farmers podcast with me, your host, Ben Eagle. For previous episodes, visit thinkingcountry.com or find the podcast on iTunes or SoundCloud by searching for Meet the Farmers. Hello everyone and welcome to the show. This is episode 48 of Meet the Farmers. A particular welcome if you're joining us for the first time. It's great to have you on board. Please do go back to previous episodes. They're all available at thinkingcountry.com or you can find them on iTunes, SoundCloud, eatfarmnow.com or anywhere where you listen to your podcasts. If you can't find it on your podcast provider, please do get in touch and I'll see what I can do. You can get in touch with me and find my contact details at thinkingcountry.com. This episode is the first in a series on Meet the Farmers where I went on a podcast road trip to the Cotswolds, Worcestershire, Herefordshire and North Wales in late September and early October of this year. Big thanks to the Mercer Charitable Foundation who supported this trip. Hello and welcome to episode 48 of Meet the Farmers, which is supported by the Mercer Foundation. I'm at Abbey Home Farm, just outside of Cirencester, and I'm really pleased to be joined by Andy Dibben, who's the head grower in charge of market gardening here, and Kate Yales, who's the lead stock person. Abbey Home Farm was converted to organic production in 1991 and is about 650 hectares in size. There's a huge number of enterprises here, which I'll get Andy and Kate to explain. The farm was awarded the Organic Food Awards Producer of the Year in 1999. The Farm Shop was Organic Retailer of the Year 2000, and in 2017, the Farm Shop was a finalist in the BBC Food and Farming Awards. Thank you so much for having me today. It's really, really good to be here. I mentioned in that there's a lot going on here, which there really is. Andy, can you start just by explaining all the various enterprises and sort of how they fit together or whether they're managed separately?
There is, I discovered there's a full agricultural spread of enterprises and lots more on top of that. I think, for a long time in farming, it's been sort of realised that diversification is a key thing in the modern agricultural world. So we have full livestock, which Kate, I'm sure, will explain a bit more about. We do a full range of market gardening crops, fruit and veg. We have a farm shop on site, we have a cafe on site, we have a conference facility on site, we have full-time residential education set up on site, we have a preschool nursery on site, and then we have camping, holiday cottages, and I'm sure there's more stuff.
We've got an on-site butchery, on-site dairy processing. The livestock enterprises comprise of a small dairy herd, a beef herd. We've got pigs, laying hens, chickens for meat, sheep, and then of course the arable as well.
Yeah, I think you definitely win the award for the most enterprises on the podcast so far. and out of all those, including traineeships and trainees and apprentices, how many people are involved on the place?
So about 45.
Yeah, so I think it varies seasonally, kind of varies between 45 to 60, and I think that's people, there's a lot of full-time staff, there's a lot of part-time staff. We have a lot of voluntary staff. Mm-hmm. We have voluntary staff who are here for training, voluntary staff because they just want to be involved in the project as well. And the education side, kind of different times of the year, has larger staffing and lower staffing around when schools are visiting and things like that. So I think we've been up to 60 staff at times on site. So lots to manage. Mm. But I have to say the structure's very good. They've been diversifying for a long time. It's not all down to one person to manage all these different things. The owners have sort of have recruited the right people into the right roles, and compared to other farms, I feel very well staffed up on this farm, and there's a lot of really, good agricultural wisdom present here, which is nice to work alongside and learn from. Mm.
Let's talk about both your backgrounds. Kate, perhaps first. Mm-hmm. How did you come to your position here? And I know that you have a farming background.
So I do have a farming background. I grew up on a small organic farm in Devon, but farming really wasn't what I wanted to do at all as I was growing up. I was pursuing other things and went away to university and studied geography. And it wasn't until I'd actually done my degree and went into a minimum wage job and then decided that wasn't good enough and then went travelling that I rediscovered farming. I was in Australia at the time working on a permaculture farm, and it was on the other side of the world that I had the realisation that actually farming was where my heart was. Growing good quality food amongst a lovely community and sharing what we produced together was really what brought it back home to me and made me realise that farming was what I wanted to pursue. So from that point on, I tried to get as much practical experience as possible. I got numerous jobs working on different farms, working with different livestock enterprises, on the lead up to actually studying it at the RAU, studying agriculture at the RAU for a short intensive course, just to give me a bit of theory and scientific knowledge behind the practical knowledge that I was learning. Then while I was at the RAU, it actually turned out that I was looking for somewhere to live. I approached Hilary here at the organic farm shop and hoped to get some sort of reciprocal arrangement and to swap some of my labour and some of my time for some accommodation.
Yeah.
And in doing so, she saw my CV and they decided to employ me instead on a part-time basis. Didn't give me any accommodation, but I managed to fund my accommodation with the money I was earning from the job here.
And that was your step in?
So that was my step in. At the end of the course, when I finished studying, they offered me a full-time position as assistant stockperson, which I gladly accepted. I was in that position for 6 months. Then with a bit of a change of staff, I then took on the role of lead stockperson, which is the current position that I'm in now.
And Andy, what about you? Where did your interest in growing, I suppose, first come from, and what's your rough CV before you came?
Funny enough, it's fairly similar to Kate's in that I didn't really know that I'd been influenced by growing at a young age. And I grew up on a farm, on a small farm, so large small holding. My mum was a shepherdess. She was Australian, so it's in her blood, and. You don't notice when you grow up in those surroundings how much they influence you. She was also a mad keen organic grower before anyone was really into growing organic veg. I used to have my pocket money in her garden, and then I kind of went out in the big wide world. I had a very wild hedonistic 20s. Having, like Kate, I did a lot of minimum wage factory work when I left school. Didn't like it. Went off to find something else in the world. You know, had a great time, but then came back, had children, and came back into sort of the responsible world. And I actually started off in forestry, doing copsing and charcoal making, hurdle making, so working in woodlands, doing sustainable woodland management. Through that, I ended up doing tree planting projects on farms, and then I kind of really kind of hit it off with one sort of farm owner who ran a big care farm on the Mendips for adults with autism. And I got back into my livestock sort of beginnings there, and that was very lucky. I mean, the guy was really into his rare breed stock, had lovely rare breed cattle, rare breed sheep, all sorts. But it was an outward looking educational farm, and for me that theme was always carried on all the way through. So I did livestock for a while, did about mixed livestock, did about 2 years of just pure shepherding, and then that work just dried up, and I ended up just as a tractor driver on a veg farm, and for the first year. And just quite liked what was going on out the window. Oh, this is quite interesting. This is very different to livestock. And then I was at that farm for sort of 3 years, and by the end had become the head grower there. And we had just got the bug, got the plant bug. And I think everyone who gets into horticulture wants to get into it. Like all these things, it's a subject that the more you get into the subject, the bigger it gets, the bigger it gets, the more you want to learn about it. And then very sort of a fortuitous sequence of events really led me to here. I ended up being the head grower and farm manager at a place called the Community Farm, a big CSA project just south of Bristol in Somerset. And I was there for 5 years as it sort of got off the ground, and sort of just started to cut its teeth as a serious business. And then after 5 years of there, I got a phone call from Hilary saying she was looking for a new head grower here at Abbey Home Farm. And having worked in lots of startups, I knew Hilary's farm, Abbey Home Farm, and it's definitely not a startup. It's been here for a long time. They've got everything fairly sussed, nice infrastructure, nice equipment. So it didn't take me too long to consider Hilary's offer and move my family up here. And I've been here for 5 years, and it's a fantastic place to work. I love the ethos towards training on all levels, from 3-year-olds right the way through to retired folk coming here for cooking courses and doing a bit of gardening, to people who want to get into horticulture commercially through apprenticeships. So, and the thing I love the most is that how all of those what can be benevolent and charitable activities and non-agricultural activities are really professionally worked in and linked with a very competitive commercial food operation.
Yeah.
So everything, the underlying thing to everything we do here is feeding people as sustainably as possible. Mm-hmm. And that filters into all of the other less agricultural things that we do on the farm.
So with the farm shop, how much that is sold in the shop is produced on the farm?
Well, to begin with, all the meat produce, that's all produced here on site. So we supply the shop with 1 beef animal a month, and roughly about 4 pigs a month and 3 lambs a month. So chickens are also all raised here on the farm from day old till they're slaughtered. Majority eggs sold in the shop are produced here, but then we do have to buy some extras in when the demand's there. On the veg side of things, it varies depending on the season, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, veg is very seasonal. Although I'd love everyone in this country just to eat English-grown fruit and vegetables, they wouldn't be eating fruit for a lot of the year. Yeah. So there's the same old thing comes up in farm shops. The way my remit from Hillary with the veg garden is to keep the farm shop and the cafe in seasonally available UK veg for as long of the year as possible. Yeah. In an average and a good year, we will be I'd say for 8 months of the year we'll supply all the carrots, from new potatoes right the way through to end of storage potatoes in March. We supply all the potatoes. So yeah, an average to good year, in season, all the veg will be coming from here that is UK. But bananas, avocados, lemons, pineapples, we still import a lot of fruit and veg. Yeah. Out of season veg as well. Hungry Gap. There's a big period of the year in the UK where new season crops haven't grown and storage crops have run out. So where it's virtually impossible to supply UK veg.
And do you think people have just got so used to that importing nature that it's just expected?
Yes. Every farm shop I've ever worked in before here have started off just selling what they grow in the fields where we've worked, and that gets going and you build up a bit of a customer base and you put out your first customer questionnaire. The number one request from every customer is, we'd like citrus fruit, can you get avocados, can you get mushrooms, it'd be nice to have tomatoes for a longer time in the year. I think in reality that is the world we now live in. Yeah. It would be a huge effort. I don't know anyone in this country who's happy to just eat cabbage and swede for 3 months. Yeah. In UK box industry, they call that swede fatigue, which is if you go for a just UK grown box, by the time you get to March, April, it can look pretty much the same every week.
All the milk sold in the shop is produced here. Then we make some cheese on site, yoghurt on site, cream on site, which is also sold in the shop. Then we also buy in other products to sell alongside.
And then the other thing about the shop is obviously there's all the stuff that we cut. There's Whole Foods. So it's a fully stocked shop, and the desire from Hillary is that we can be a one-stop shop. We are a viable, fully sustainable, fully organic. Everything in the shop is organic, everything, and we're a viable, fully organic alternative to going to a big commercial supermarket. So someone can come here and buy everything that they want.
And you can happily survive just by shopping in the organic farm shop, because I barely shop anywhere else.
Yeah.
And most of your customers, how many of your customers are local and how many of your customers are travelling in from...
Well, I know we have regular customers that will drive an hour to use the shop. There's a lot of passing trade. There's people who come to holiday in the Cotswolds. They may only come to the Cotswolds 1 week of the year, but when they're here, they'll come and shop here. But I would definitely say that our bread and butter in the shop is weekly shoppers. Mm-hmm. That you can see from the products that are being bought and the volumes that are being bought. And the lovely thing is, the shop's been going so long. I mean, I think Hillary does very little marketing.
Yeah.
Word of mouth, as we all know, is the most powerful marketer, and it almost seems like we're onto second generation customers. So kids that would have been coming here as a kid are now adults, possibly parents themselves, and they're now coming in the shop. So that's a really deep, profound form of marketing. Especially as a grower and a producer, producing for people doing a weekly shop is actually quite an easy thing to focus on. If you're selling into a tourist area, that's fickle. Sun's out, you've got good trade. Sun goes in, no one's around. Here, people come and do their weekly shop, whatever the weather. So it's a nice predictable format. It's got all the challenges of retail, but it's a more I can crop plan much more easily for that. So yeah, it's good.
Talking veg, what have you been growing over the course of this year, and how happy have you been with harvest results?
So this year was always going to be interesting because last year was the greatest year I'd ever had in my growing career. So I kind of, whatever happened, it was going to be tricky to match. But it's interesting, it's especially in veg, like all that, we're living climate change every day, every single day now. The warm patterns, the big challenges for us are torrential downpours, which have caused us a lot of problems this year. We've had a lot of slug problems this year, especially on potatoes. June was a weird month this year, really wet, quite cold, low nighttime temperatures. In veg, June's a critical month.
Yeah.
You hold off, lots of the crops we grow are frost tender, so we don't dare plant them out. Anything frost tender, we don't tend to plant out until mid-May, beginning of June. So you got these young plants go out around that time, and then summer, some hit pause on summer, and it rained quite a lot, and it went really cold, and that your crops are left sitting there not moving, and that's really risky for slug damage. With the real violent changes in weather patterns are doing lots of strange things to insects. So insects are a big challenge in organic veg production, and you rely on a slight pattern of pest species getting bad, and then generally the predator species hatch out a little bit later than the pest species, and there's slightly warmer temperatures. This year we had a couple of things where we had a spike of warm temperatures. We had 28 degrees in February, which had loads of pest species of insects hatch out, and then it went cooler again, so none of the predators hatched out. So we had a lot more insect pests earlier in the year. So these they're everyday problems in veg growing, but they're becoming more of a challenge. Dry, warm, these like really warm autumns can see some of your summer insect pests drift longer into winter, and that's a risk.
And as an organic grower, what's your arsenal against that, other than looking ahead?
Against climate change? Generally, it's a lot of what I do as a veg grower is trying to mimic nature. My only defence as an organic veg grower against insects is other insects.
Yeah.
And a healthy, vibrant ecosystem that is in balance. It's never always perfectly in balance, you have swings and things, but generally they look after each other. The other big one that's been going on here for years, and you kind of forget when you've been doing it for years, is mixed cropping. Yeah. We grow 60 different crops of fruit and veg. There's never a year where it's almost impossible to envisage a sequence of weather that would mean all of them performed really well. It's almost an impossible thing to achieve. The reason we grow that diversity is A, to give the customers maximum choice, but also it's massive resilience against wild swings in weather. A good example this year would be the three most important vegetables when most families in the country go shopping are potatoes, carrots and onions. If you do a veg box scheme, they go in every single box. Those three things generally. Your parents go out shopping, or I go out shopping as a parent, I almost always buy carrots, potatoes. They're the basis of most English meals. And I always say, out of those three, two have got to perform really well commercially. This year, potatoes haven't. A lot of greyed out to slugs. Great year on carrots, great year on onions. And that is kind of a classic example. We do have years where all three perform well. We'll never have a year where all three break the records, because they kind of require different weather sequences. Yeah. But we had an average year, is the short response to that question.
Yeah. Aside from climate change, what are your main challenges as a veg grower, both in the current, I suppose, political climate, but also looking at maintaining your soil quality? We were talking before we started recording about water, especially, which as an Essex man in this part of the world, I look on you in envy, but it's still you've got that disparity and the changing nature of rainfall. Yeah. What other challenges are you facing?
Average age of a farmer.
Yeah.
This is a big one. and we also touched on farms employing getting more mechanised because of commercial pressures, more mechanised, less staff. We need knowledge in farming. It's a skillful. I think from outside farming can often be looked upon as a sort of simplistic activity. Once you get into farming, you realise It's incredibly skilled, multi-skilled. You've got to be an electrician, a plumber. So, you know, I didn't realise to be a horticulturalist, you had to almost be a professional plumber, especially with the droughts that are going on now. You know, it's creative agricultural plumbing. I wouldn't do it in my house, but you know, it's a skill base I didn't realise you needed. You know, and I'm sure Kate in the dairy has required all kinds of skills that have nothing to do with livestock, and a little bit to do with electricity, and you know,
and a bit of electricity work, which is very different to caring for the animals, really.
Yeah. And that's why we have such an emphasis here on training, because there is a serious lack of people coming into the industry. So I see that as a huge challenge. I see I could go either way. I think what the world should eat is a huge subject at the moment. As a veg farmer, the current conversations look quite positive. But in other forms of farming, there's some big challenges coming up around what the world should eat, and I think those are becoming more and more prevalent to us all involved in farming. Something we've got to react to, and as always, communication and getting the truth out is really, really important. So I think things like this anyway, of farmers, as we talked about before, quite like to shut themselves in the field. We like our office; it's beautiful. There's no one in it. But actually, it's really important for farmers to get out and start getting their knowledge across to customer bases, and really important to start getting the public onto farms more and more and more of all ages, expose them to where their food comes from, so they genuinely know what the key facts for making their decisions going forward are.
Let's turn towards the dairy. Kate, you're milking shorthorns.
Yes, shorthorns and shorthorn crosses. We've got 38 cows in the herd at the moment. It's been an ongoing process to build the herd up. Started off with 10, and we're aiming to get to about 40 to 45 as a maximum. Like you said, we've got shorthorns, but we're actually crossing them with red and white Frisian genetics, purely to just increase the yield. Shorthorn might produce between 4,000 and 5,000 litres a year, whereas a red and white Frisian cross, you can potentially get maybe 7,000 litres a year. We don't really want to be at that point. We want to, at the moment we're producing about 5,500 litres per cow. And then our ongoing plan from there is to cross that progeny with Swedish red genetics to get a three-way cross, and then we'll go back to shorthorns. So we've always got the shorthorns there. We want a cow that's going to milk for a good long time. She's going to maintain her health, even if we don't quite get that high yield.
Yeah, I was going to say, because especially as an organic producer, in terms of your genetics and what you're actually looking for, it tends to be a wider net, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so we've got the shorthorn in there for the longevity. We've got the red and white Frisian just to boost the yield a bit. And then Swedish red is also, they're also good milkers, but you get the hybrid vigour coming through as well. They tend to do well on grass. That's predominantly what we're trying to achieve, really, is to produce our milk from grass with as little concentrate input as possible.
Right, we're going to try the 1 minute soapbox, which Kate has very kindly volunteered Andy to do. So this gives guests 1 minute to talk about any subject at all, within reason, of their choice. Andy, do you have something in mind?
Well, I have to say, my passionate subject, and it's kind of where my real enthusiasm for veggies is. I would probably, the headline would be the interconnectedness of all things.
Wow, that is big. Let's go for that. Okay, so you've got 1 minute.
1 minute.
1 minute on the clock.
Okay.
The interconnectedness of all things.
Repetition?
You can have repetition, you can have deviation, although not that much deviation, because you've only got 1 minute. Ready? 3, 2, 1, starting now.
Okay, so the more you interact, the more you crawl around the veg field, weeding and harvesting vegetables, you are in a privileged position. I get paid to do this and study nature on a really, really intricate level and see it every day, all the way through the seasons. And you start to genuinely realise, and I've also, the key thing, swinging point for me on this was to come and work on a farm that has been organic for as long as this farm. And that's allowed significant, large ecosystems to develop and to mature. To witness those in action is just the most, it's mind-boggling. Humans can't even attempt to recreate this. So for us to go around destroying these ecosystems, whether it be cutting rainforest down, whether it be covering fields in insecticides, once you're aware of how delicate and intricate that is, we shouldn't destroy it.
Very good.
Oh, was that a minute and 5?
That's pretty good. That's fine. You edged over.
Andy Dibben there. And of course, Kate Yells, who I spoke to at Abbey Home Farm near Cirencester. Next time, I'll be speaking to Jonty Brunye on the next leg of my Cotswolds road trip. Big thanks to the Mercer Charitable Foundation for supporting this episode, Tom Bland for his help with production, and of course to you for listening. Please do subscribe to the podcast and share this episode with somebody. I'd really appreciate that. I'll look forward to you joining me next time on Meet the Farmers.